Hello's my YouTube family. There are stories that never made it to the news. Whispers buried deep and where no light reaches. Secrets too dark for the world to believe. I search the blackest corners of the internet and far beyond to bring you the truth they tried so hard to erase. Tales that were deleted, covered up, abandoned in digital shadows. But fear remembers everything. These are not just stories. They're warnings. And if you're still watching, if you're still here, it's already too late. Welcome to Fears, and now let the horror begin.
It was just after midnight when I left my friend's apartment, my breath misting in the cold Asheville air. The street stretched out before me, deserted, eerily still. Every footstep I made sounded unnaturally loud against the cracked concrete sidewalks. The only movement was the occasional gust of wind scattering dead leaves across the ground. I zipped up my jacket tighter and shoved my hands into my pockets, quickening my steps toward my car parked 2 blocks away. That's when I saw him, a man standing beneath a flickering street lamp. He wore a heavy black hoodie, the hood drawn low to hide his face. His posture was strange, stiff, almost too still, like he wasn't waiting for someone but instead watching. I kept my head down and passed him without making eye contact. My instincts prickled uncomfortably under my skin, telling me to move faster. I had barely gone 10 steps when I heard it, a soft scrape of shoes behind me. I glanced over my shoulder. The man was following me. Not casually, not coincidentally. His pace matched mine exactly, each step deliberate, like he was savoring the chase. My heart thudded painfully in my chest. I clutched my keys tighter in my pocket, mentally mapping the quickest route to my car. When I risked another glance back, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. His hands were no longer buried in his hoodie pockets. He was wearing surgical gloves. Latex stretched tight over his fingers, ghostly pale under the dim light. Why would someone wear gloves like that at midnight, unless they were planning something terrible? I turned a corner, breaking into a near run. My car was just up ahead. I could see it glinting under the orange glow of a lonely streetlight. Relief surged through me. I fumbled for my keys, my fingers trembling violently. That's when they slipped from my hand. The metallic clatter of the keys hitting the ground felt deafening in the silent street. I dropped to my knees, scraping them as I desperately groped for the keys, my vision blurring with panic. Footsteps pounded closer, heavy, rapid. I snatched the keys and leapt toward my car, yanking the door open and throwing myself inside. My hands shook so badly that locking the doors took 2 tries. And then he was there. The man slammed into the side of my car with a force that rocked it on its wheels. He pressed his gloved hands against the driver's window, the latex making a sickening squeal as he smeared them across the glass. His face was inches from mine, hollow, wild eyes, a mouth twisted into a grin too wide, too wrong. I turned the key in the ignition. The car sputtered. For one horrifying second, it refused to start. The man pounded harder, his fists creating spiderweb cracks in the glass. The engine finally roared to life. I threw the car into reverse without looking and tore backward down the street. Tires screeched, smoke burned from the asphalt. As I sped away, I risked a glance in the mirror. He stood there, motionless in the middle of the road, watching me go, those surgical gloves glinting under the broken streetlight. I didn't stop driving until I hit the highway, heart pounding so violently it felt like it might burst from my chest. I filed a police report later, but nothing ever came of it. No arrests, no updates. To this day, I wonder what would have happened if I had been just a few seconds slower, or if the car hadn't started at all. It was supposed to be a quick trip. I had just finished my shift at the diner and realized I was out of milk. Against my better judgment, I decided to walk to the nearby 24-hour convenience store. It was only a few blocks away, and the night was crisp, quiet. I pulled my jacket tighter around me as I walked down the narrow, dimly lit streets. The lamps buzzed overhead, casting long, trembling shadows on the sidewalk. I kept my head down, focusing on the sound of my boots clicking against the pavement, when I noticed it, the unmistakable feeling of being watched. I glanced around, but saw nothing except rows of closed shops and empty cars parked against the curb. Still, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I quickened my pace. The store was just at the end of the block, a lonely glow spilling from its windows. But before I could reach it, something grabbed me from behind. An arm, rough and powerful, wrapped around my chest, pinning my arms to my sides. I tried to scream, but a gloved hand clamped down over my mouth, muffling the sound. Panic exploded inside me as the stranger dragged me backward, off the sidewalk and into a narrow alley swallowed by darkness. My feet scraped against the asphalt, trying to dig in to fight, but he was too strong. The world tilted as I was slammed against the cold, damp brick wall. For a split second, the flickering light at the mouth of the alley caught his face, and it was blank, emotionless, as if he wasn't even human. I thrashed wildly, landing a kick to his shin. He grunted but didn't let go. Instead, he tightened his grip, pulling something from his jacket pocket, a length of coarse, frayed rope. I screamed into his hand, the sound coming out weak and broken. No one heard me, no one was coming. Desperation took over. I twisted and bit down hard on his hand. He yelled and instinctively loosened his grip for just a second, but it was enough. I broke free, stumbling backward, half tripping over garbage bags and broken glass. I didn't think. I just ran. My lungs burned, my heart slammed against my ribs, but I didn't dare stop. I burst out of the alley and into the convenience store, slamming the door behind me so hard that the bell overhead clanged violently. The cashier, a bored-looking teenager, stared at me wide-eyed as I collapsed against the counter, gasping for air. I turned back toward the window. The man was standing at the edge of the alley, just outside the reach of the store's lights, his figure a black silhouette against the night, watching me. He didn't come closer. He simply turned and melted back into the shadows. The police arrived 20 minutes later, but of course by then he was gone. They took my statement and promised to patrol the area more often, but the damage was done. For weeks after that night, I refused to walk anywhere alone. Sometimes even now, when I find myself alone in a dark place, I swear I can still feel the ghost of that gloved hand closing over my mouth, and I wonder if he is still out there looking for the one who got away. It was a cold autumn night in Salem, the kind where the wind whispers through the trees and the old houses seem to creak with a life of their own. I was staying alone at my aunt's old Victorian home while she was traveling overseas. The house, built in the 1800s, had always creeped me out. The long, narrow hallways, the heavy wooden doors that groaned on their hinges, the way the old pipes moaned in the walls late at night. Still, I told myself it was just an old house and tried to settle into bed. By 2 a.m., I was finally drifting into a restless sleep when a sound jolted me awake. 3 slow, deliberate knocks echoed through the silence. They were coming from the front door. I sat up, heart hammering in my chest. Who could possibly be knocking at this hour? I stayed frozen for a moment, listening. Another set of knocks. Not hurried, not desperate. Calm, intentional. I slid out of bed, my bare feet freezing against the wooden floorboards. Moving slowly, I crept down the stairs, each step groaning under my weight. The house seemed to hold its breath, every shadow stretching long and sharp under the faint glow of the street lamp outside. I reached the front hallway. Through the frosted glass of the front door, I could just barely make out the shape of someone standing on the porch, motionless. I hesitated, my hand trembling over the doorknob. Then came a voice, a whisper, almost too soft to hear. "Let me in." My blood turned to ice. Every instinct in my body screamed to run, to hide. but I couldn't move. I was rooted to the spot, trapped between terror and curiosity. I tried to peer closer, but the figure didn't move. No knocking now, just standing there, waiting. Without thinking, I reached for the switch by the door and flipped on the porch light. The figure vanished. Gone. The porch was completely empty, but the knocking, it didn't stop. 3 slow knocks again, this time louder, coming not from the front door, but from the back. I spun around, heart jackhammering against my ribs. Someone, or something, was now at the back door. I stumbled backward, nearly tripping over the rug. I knew there was no one else in the house, no one for miles in either direction who would be visiting at this ungodly hour. I raced to the kitchen, grabbed the biggest knife I could find, and pressed my back against the wall, trying to stay quiet, trying to stay invisible. The back doorknob rattled violently. Then, silence. Minutes crawled by. No more knocks. No more voices. Finally, gathering every ounce of courage I had, I inched toward the back door and peeked out through the curtain. Nothing. Just the wind stirring the leaves on the porch. Maybe it was over. Maybe it was just my imagination. I turned to head back upstairs and nearly screamed. There, standing halfway up the staircase, was the silhouette of a man, completely still, head cocked slightly to the side, as if studying me. I didn't think. I bolted out the front door barefoot into the freezing night, running until my lungs burned and my legs gave out under me. I ended up at the neighbor's house, hammering on their door until they woke up and let me in. The police searched my aunt's house thoroughly. No signs of forced entry. No footprints on the porch. No one on the security cameras. They said it was probably a prank, but I knew better, because every night since then, no matter where I am, at exactly 2 a.m. I hear 3 knocks. Always 3. Always waiting.
What you just heard, Han, was more than a story. It was a glimpse into what waits in the dark. Some truths should never be found, but now that you've heard them, they're coming closer. Subscribe while you still can. This was Fears. Until next time, keep your lights on.